racing the clock. Jordan for the win. Yes! He did it again! He is now back! Holy mackerel! Michael Jordan rings a 2, and the Bulls win 99-98.
One of the conversations we'll probably touch on, why after all of these years, having all of this footage in the vault, is this footage now coming to light? And I suspect there's some kind of power move behind this whole documentary.
This is the Beats and Balls Show.
JR the Beatmaker. That guy Ken. Mr. Crisp. It's proper deep.
It's the fashion, it's the art, it's the polish, it's the culture.
Beats and Balls.
Ballers assemble. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 12 of the Beats and Balls Show, the alternative sports podcast that gets behind the culture of the sports that we love. I am JR, and as ever, I'm joined by that guy Ken and Mr. Crisp. How you doing, guys?
Good.
Good. Nice.
What's going on, man?
This is, of course, the second episode since we started lockdown. Make sure you go and check out the previous one, which came at you in two parts. We spoke to Amar Singh, head of football content at Budweiser, and he gave us some inside info on how sports marketing works during quarantine. And in part two, we discussed some of our ultimate sporting icons. And that leads us nicely onto today's show. Everyone's been watching box sets and documentaries to pass the time in lockdown. One of the most captivating has got to have been The Last Dance. It tells the story of the Chicago Bulls team in the 90s and Michael Jordan's rise to sporting greatness. If you caught our previous show, you will know that we recognise Michael Jordan as one of the greatest there's ever been. Everyone knows the name.
I think he was the greatest, isn't he? Isn't that right?
In sport, in general, I'm talking.
Yeah, all right,
yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he was one of those. He's one of those sporting icons who just transcended his sport. So even if you didn't know his sport, you didn't know basketball, you knew who Michael Jordan was. Is.
Yeah, he transcended basketball like no one else has. But we wanted to know why the story of that Bulls team is so intriguing and compelling. So to help us dissect The Last Dance and the career of Michael Jordan, we've got two of the most knowledgeable people in the game. One is the halftime entertainment host for NBA Europe live events, the master of ceremonies for the Invictus Games, London 2012, and the Paralympic basketball, and the host of countless UK basketball events. And one played basketball on a scholarship at Aiken, South Carolina, and is the founder of Hosanna Sportswear, co-founder of the Rough and Ready British Basketball Tournament, which was the hottest ticket in the 90s. And with all that knowledge, he's now the director of 668, a sportswear consultancy dealing with branding, licensing, and distribution. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Simon and Roger Hosanna.
Wow, that was some entry.
Welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you on. So we'll start off just by sorting out what got you guys into basketball initially, because it's not the obvious first choice especially for kids in the UK anyway.
Exactly. Especially back in those days.
Yeah, Raj, I'll let you do it because you obviously had an earlier entry into the game than I did, and it's because of you that I got involved with it. So I'll hand that first bit over to you.
Okay. No, thanks for the introduction, and very privileged to be here and talk about one of my not just sporting icons, but one of my sort of business icons as well. So. In terms of my story, my backstory and introduction into the sport of basketball is a really valid point, because basketball for many, many years has been talked about as sort of, the next big game, massive game, bigger participation rate than many of the more common known sports in the UK, but never really happened. How I got into basketball was quite an interesting story. Both Simon and I are sons of a British Army soldier. We spent our formative years living in Germany. Like most kids at that time, especially playing in Germany, we were massively into football. We actually started my education in England at the age of 11. So prior to that, I'd spent most of my time abroad, mainly in Germany, in Singapore. Came to England, had a couple of months at primary school, and was a very good footballer. I was about to sign junior forwards with Schalke 04 back in the day, but we came back to England, and was really just picking up from football at that time. But then I went to school in Mitcham, and the head teacher at our school in Mitcham was a massive Harlem Globetrotters fan. And so that, interestingly, was the first introduction to the sport of basketball. And as a gifted 11, 12-year-old with a lot of natural ability and great hand-eye coordination, he felt I had
and subtle with it,
perfectly transferable to the sport of basketball. Well, no, you wanted my backstory, so I'm telling you backstory.
It's always the humbleness, Roger. It's always the humbleness.
Sorry, if we're gonna
dig yourself up, Roger. Do it, man.
When I start interrupting me all afternoon, I'll leave now. Anyway,
carry on, Roger.
I started playing basketball, and was nowhere near as good at basketball as at football. But at that age, someone said to me, "Oh, you're too small to play basketball." And fortunately, Dad had always sort of taught us that "can't" is a 4-letter word. And I'm like, who are you to tell me I can't play basketball? So just sort of enjoyed basketball as much as football and athletics. And went to so the Merton schools had a 3-tier system, so we went to high school, so the equivalent of the 3rd year in secondary school, and we went to high school. Eastfields High School again coincidentally was a basketball powerhouse, and so the head of sports at Eastfields was connected to Kingston Basketball Club, and then just started playing basketball as much as football. And at that point, he basically said, you just really need to, just because of commitment. I was playing for many school teams and at that point the club team, so he just said, look, you just need to try and make a decision between the two sports, and obviously coupled with my education. So bizarrely decided I was going to sort of concentrate on basketball, so really focused on that. And as I said, Kingston Basketball Club was the powerhouse program at the time. And going to Kingston Basketball Club and playing in summer camps, I got spotted at a very young age and got offered a basketball scholarship to the University of South Carolina. So in the mid-'80s, I was one of the first sort of young players to sort of transition from sort of English basketball to try and sort of play on the college level to get some experience, to get my ground in, with a view that I knew I was never ever going to make the NBA, but certainly thought I'd come back and play sort of professional basketball. So that was really sort of my backstory. And later on in life, when I came back from America, realised very quickly there was no money to be made in basketball. I came back a year early from college, and so Kingston at the time, under the coaching genius of a guy called Kevin Cadle and owned by football super agent Dennis Roach, they had literally 7 Americans playing before me. And Cadle he called me and my dad in one morning, and he basically said, look, your son's not going to play. He's got his education. For the best of his career, he probably needs to leave. And so I transferred to Crystal Palace, who at the time were the other big club, obviously around the genius that was Alton Bird. But I went to Crystal Palace just as the money ran out. And so spent a couple of years playing there and realised very quickly there was going to be no long-term future or prosperity playing basketball for a living. So I got into the world of fashion. And that's really sort of what's brought me sort of through my life, my later years, and probably got me to this point today. So
when you say
sorry, George.
I was going to say, when you say fashion, like how do you go from basketball to fashion? Unless like I don't. Are you talking about what the 90s?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So and it's one that I think will probably be a theme of this whole dialogue. There's a real fusion between sport, fashion, and music. And the sport of basketball, more than anything else, really embodies sort of fashion lifestyle. And if you look at many trends going back many years, even before the world of the internet and the world became a lot smaller, the influence of basketball and basketball style, especially if you look at retro trends now, basketball more than any other sport is very influential in terms of trend setting. So when I was playing at Crystal Palace, my girlfriend, who I later went on to marry, my wife, she was working in fashion, and she said, "Oh, well, you're interested in clothes. you think you can dress? She's like always sort of pulling my leg or whatever. So she said, why don't you go to one of these agencies? Because, I know sort of they're recruiting. So fortunately, I had a degree in business and finance, and right place, right time. I went to an interview for the old Burton Group, so Champion Sport. Now I'm really showing my age. Champion Sport, even before the heyday of the JD Sports and Sports Direct. One of the biggest sports retailers on the high street was Champion Sport, who were the sports division of the Burton Group. Went for an interview, I remember it vividly, it was July the 15th, 1989. Went for my interview on the Friday afternoon, went in there and just had a real passion and a real knowledge about sort of sports. And you got to think at the time, the sports industry, the fashion industry even, was in its infancy. So you've got this, young kid, black kid from South London with a sporting background and really with a keen interest in sports, and talked a really good game in my interview on the Friday. Started work on the Monday as a trainee merchandiser. So had no idea about the concept of getting clothes into stores, but just really had this interest in fashion and played sports. And so I started as a trainee merchandiser. And this is the guy responsible for the numbers and making the tea at that time. And that was the whole concept of buying and merchandising was introduced to me on the Friday. Started my job on the Monday, and it was probably the next best thing apart from playing professional sports. So literally right place, right time, and I guess fate brought me to this career. And showing my age clearly, 30 odd years later.
Well, Champion is on trend now.
Well,
everyone's wearing Champion.
Very much, exactly, yeah. It's relevant.
You guys talk about Champion. You're talking about Champion the brand. I work for Champion the retailer, and then so when we talk about my role as a consultant, one of the key areas that I'm really, really strong on now is branding, intellectual property, and trademarking. And so there was a legal fight when I first joined the Burton Group between Champion Sport, the retailer, and Champion the brand, because Champion the brand objected to Champion Sport using the name because they felt that they were passing off. So again, that was a real introduction to some of the real, nuts and bolts, the fundamentals that really generates the commerce of sport and business generally. And that was an introduction again for me. And that's really how I've sort of developed a sort of a unique position in the marketplace, because I'm very strong on brands and intellectual property, but all started from just a real passion, like many young black kids at the time, growing up in South London. Played sports, loved my clothes, loved my music. That was it.
Yes. And just touching on that briefly, could you just break down for us in terms of what you're doing now, the sort of sportswear consultancy? What does that sort of consist of, and how is everything you've sort of built up throughout your career? How is that kind of?
Yeah, so just to answer the question, it's my dear daughter, bless her. She said to me, "Dad, what exactly do you do?" So.
I could have put it that way, but that was a
good question.
Many people ask me that question. So in summary, I said to her, well, I do what I did for TK Maxx, I do for myself. So I 2008, I joined TK Maxx. I'm sure we all know the retailer TK Maxx. So are you fans of TK Maxx?
Yeah, I've shopped there.
Yeah.
So everyone set foot in there, I think. Yeah.
If you've got an hour.
So TK Maxx is right about now is probably one of the most successful retailers on the globe. They're a $50 billion turnover company globally. And in 2008, on the back of my own business, my brand, really just reaching the point where I had to make a decision. Do I want to mortgage everything to keep the thing going, or do I want to just try and get back on track? So I decided to go into TK Maxx really as a stopgap, just to get my eye back in and just to reestablish myself in the marketplace, having been out for the best part of a decade running my own business. And the whole concept of off-price, never knew what off-price was. And so people say, TK Maxx just a discounter. Well, it's not. I mean, TK Maxx as an organization are, they're very defensive, they're very protective, and they get very passionate about their unique positioning as a off-price retailer against the discounter. So